Good afternoon, artists. Today we are going to use our colored pencils to add a very subtle sunset to Mr. Gnome and Sluggy. We're going to use, well, you're going to use whatever colored pencils you want to use. I'm using those Prisma Premier colored pencils, and I will put the names of the colored pencils in the description. If you haven't done Mr. Gnome and Sluggy, there are two videos, one for drawing them and one for coloring them. Those links will also be in the description. And for those of you who are prepped and ready to roll, we are going to get started. First thing we need to do is add where this horizon line is going to go. And I did mine kind of right. It's not the middle of the paper, it's about 3/4 down, but it's kind of like right where Mr. Snail, Sluggy's little nose starts. And it kind of slopes down for me and then goes up. It's like a little rolling hill in the background. Just kind of get that idea. And I'm starting with Spanish orange. And I'm also using the side of my lid. And I'm gonna press really lightly when I do this. Okay, second color I'm going to use is pink. Nothing complicated about that. Still using the same thing. I'm using the side of my lid and working around my characters. I'm going up, but I'm also going back down into the sunset. The texture of your paper will create some little experiences in the sky, all its own, that you didn't anticipate, and that's okay. First layer's going great. Okay, this one is very potent when you go to put it on. It stands out a little more than the other two. This one is called Parma Violet. Sounds like I pronounced that right. But because it is a little more, it shows up, I press a little bit lighter. And this is just the first layer. It's going to look different when we get it all done. And of course, if you're using white paper, this is going to be a whole different experience for you. And you'll play with your colors until you get it where you like it. But the craft colored paper definitely affects the way that these colors look when you put them on the paper. Something to keep in mind is the purple and the yellow, when those mix, they'll create like a brownish tone. So you really want that pink in between there as a barrier. You don't want the purple and the yellow intermingling because they don't get along very well. It turns into a mud bath. Not so much friends. Okay, very nice. This one's a little unique to put in here, but it's light aqua, and on its own it doesn't really make sense in the sunset. When you mix it into the purple around the edges where you're kind of subtly fading off your sunset, you get that bluish what would you call that? What would you call it when you mix Parma Violet and Aqua? You get whatever this color is, whatever that color is. Okay, so something else that I do with the lines, let's zoom in a little, is you can see where the top of your paper hits a little more, you know, the texture in the paper. Sometimes I take and erase out a little bit of that extra texture. Just kind of break it up so there's not so many lines going up and down. It's not necessary, but you can also create some space for clouds this way. Okay, I'm gonna do it again, the whole thing, one more time.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Okay, we have a nice subtle, it's subtle. My thought is I'm still working out what I like for backgrounds on the characters. I love for them to be the focal point and for them to really pop, but it's nice to have them not just floating on craft colored paper, right? So it's like, what do we want to do to maintain them as the focal point, but also pull in some of the elements of them being on a little magical journey here. So that's what we're working out, is what are we going to do moving forward to create backgrounds for our characters. And so far this is working pretty good. So now we're going to move into the ground, and I'm going to be using poppy red and the Spanish orange, and then the other color that I'm throwing in, we haven't used yet, is apple green. We are going to start with the poppy red, and we're going to put in like a little bush line here. So you see it's very subtle. It's back here. It exists, but it's not standing out. These are like way back in the distance. There's the tree line. And we're going to put that in really subtle. I'm just doing these little circles, like this little bush line here. They kind of just come together as you move along. Various heights, because that's how a tree line would be. And it's like on your camera, if you've ever used a lens that focuses really well on your subject matter, like if you're doing a portrait, this is what your camera will do. It will create this really blurry background. Which is super pretty. We're just kind of seeing if we can't create something similar to that with our colored pencils. I'm just going to put one light layer of that orange down. Let's make the part where the trees meet the ground a little more defined. Okay, now I'm going to put some of that into the ground. Find my little tree line a little bit more here. Okay, now I'm gonna go in with that apple green. Hit it again with my poppy red. Okay, so now I want to go back up into the sunset and I want to create a little more. You see how I have a little bit of the sweeping going on in here? Like just in this area, because the rest I kind of faded out. Just a little bit of the sweeping of the colors. So we're gonna take some of the colors from the sunset and like break up the, what do they call that? I can't remember. I'll put the word down in the lines. So I'm gonna press a little harder. Kind of create these little sweeping lines. We'll do a little bit with pink too. We'll also put in a little bit of white in there at the very end. And I think this is the kind of thing that kind of like comes together as you just keep playing. And I tell all of my young artists that come in here and we're exploring, creating together, you know, we have little projects, but I really want them to feel comfortable using the tools and exploring themselves, which is exactly what they want to hear. Like they want just enough to build confidence, but not so much that they lose their creativity. And I tell them, everything you'll ever learn comes from anyone, comes from them asking, how do I? And every art tutorial, every lesson that we've ever been given on how to do something is because either they or someone else asked that question and played around. They figured it out. So it's nice to have tutorials and it's nice to do art together, but developing that capacity to just ask, how do I do this? And then playing around until you figure it out. Man, that is the fun stuff right there, isn't it? Yeah, I know my 6 to 8 year old group agrees with that. Sometimes as we get older, we're like, just tell me how to do it, I'm tired. It's funny. So see how we're just sweeping it back in and out? And as you're doing that, you're getting an area that is a little more glossy, a little more refined, stands out a little bit more than the rest of the sky, bringing our eye right back into this area. Okay, so I'm gonna use white next. I want you, when you go to use your white, to remember to get off any of the excess from the last project and make sure it's not transferring all those colors to this art piece. And hit it light with white. That would be the one thing that I say. You know, we're just kind of wanting to throw in where that sunset would be hitting the clouds and reflecting some of that light on them. Not too much. And a pastel yellow would look really pretty in this little space. If you don't have white, it actually probably would work better than white. Just very subtle. Okay, I actually am going to add a little bit of the cream color in there. Just because in certain lighting, the white is a little too stand outish. And I want to blend it in a little more. Oh, very nice. So have you seen that before? You know, when the sun's going right behind a tree line, it almost overtakes that little area right where it's setting. It'll just really go, whoa! So we'll get in there and kind of blend this out a little bit. And finally, because we added some of this apple green into the background here, I bring it back into the shadow on the brown that we originally put in when we were working on the first round. Bring it back in here. And a little bit of the poppy red. Now red and green are complementary colors, so it just dulls out the green a little bit. Very light. I don't even know if you pick it up on the camera. And then if you really want to get like serious business, because you want to make sure that the gnome looks like he's at sunset along with your snail, you can go back in and add with your Spanish orange a little bit into the snail and into the gnome, just some of that golden color. It's not necessary, but just as that little bit of extra something. Throw a little in here too. Finishing touches. Cool, man. We did it. All right, we'll continue to do that. We'll draw, and if you don't want to draw, you can use my outlines, and then we'll color, and then we'll add backgrounds. So the videos will be broken up. It'll give you a lot to do, and there'll be a lot of joy to be had. All right, guys, so see you next time.